Camilla brought 20 Parker Bowleses to the coronation. There were 4 Middletons.
Royal fans were shocked when reports surfaced that Queen Camilla had taken royal jewelry that was meant for Princess Charlotte and gave it to someone else. According to palace insiders, Kate Middleton found out that several royal heirlooms, originally set aside for her daughter, were quietly reassigned. These jewels included pieces that once belonged to Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth, items meant to be passed down to Princess Charlotte when she got older. But instead of being saved for Charlotte, some of these pieces ended up with Queen Camilla's granddaughter, Lola Parker Bowles, a child with no royal title and not in the line of succession. Kate was upset. These weren't just pretty necklaces or tiaras, they were part of Charlotte's royal heritage. She stayed calm, as she always does, but began quietly looking into it. She checked records and spoke to trusted staff to find out what really happened. What she discovered was serious. The heirlooms were taken from the collection meant for Charlotte and moved to Camilla's side of the family without proper discussion. Kate didn't go to the press. She didn't make a dramatic scene, but she did something even stronger. She acted. She worked behind the scenes to make sure those items were returned and that Charlotte's inheritance was protected. The story leaked to the media, and the public quickly took Kate's side. Many people felt it was wrong for Queen Camilla to give away items that were clearly meant for Princess Charlotte. Support poured in for Kate on social media, calling her brave for quietly standing up for her daughter. This royal moment wasn't just about jewelry. It was about doing what's right, protecting family, and honoring the legacy of Princess Diana. Princess Charlotte was born into the royal family in 2015. As the daughter of Prince William and Princess Kate, and granddaughter of the late Princess Diana, Charlotte has always been expected to inherit some of the most important royal heirlooms. These were not just beautiful items like tiaras, necklaces, and brooches, they were pieces with deep history. Some belonged to Queen Elizabeth II. Others were famously worn by Diana. These heirlooms were part of a plan to one day be passed on to Charlotte when she was old enough. Inside the palace, everything was carefully tracked. Each item had records: who had worn it, where it had come from, and who it was meant for in the future. Sources say that many of these items were being saved for Charlotte's 18th birthday or her first major royal engagement. But something changed. After King Charles became monarch in 2022, Queen Camilla began taking on more responsibility. She became more active in public and started making decisions about the royal household, including, some say, the royal jewelry collection. By early 2025, things began to feel off. Items that had not been seen in years suddenly started showing up in public, but they weren't worn by Princess Kate or any senior royal woman. Instead, they were spotted on Lola Parker Bowles, Camilla's granddaughter, who is not a working royal and does not hold any royal title. Photos from charity events, galas, and private royal gatherings showed Lola wearing tiaras and necklaces that had once been associated with Diana or were believed to be saved for Charlotte. At first, this caused quiet confusion among royal watchers, then concern. Where were these heirlooms coming from? Soon, palace insiders began to leak information. They claimed that some of the items meant for Charlotte had been quietly reassigned by Queen Camilla to her side of the family, including to Lola. This wasn't just seen as unusual, it was viewed as breaking royal tradition. In the royal family, heirlooms are not random gifts. They are passed down through bloodlines, representing trust, duty, and legacy. Giving these historic items to someone outside the direct royal line, especially someone not holding a title, was a huge departure from tradition. When Princess Kate found out, she was stunned. She had always believed that Charlotte would inherit items tied to her grandmother, Princess Diana, just as William had inherited Diana's sapphire engagement ring, now worn by Kate. These heirlooms were personal, they were meaningful, and they were missing. Kate knew something was wrong, but instead of reacting emotionally, she stayed calm. She started quietly asking questions. She checked the royal records. She talked to people she trusted, royal aides, family advisors, and even some of Diana's former staff. What she discovered shocked her. Pieces set aside for Charlotte were no longer marked for her in palace inventory. In fact, they had been moved, not lost, but reassigned. It wasn't a mistake, it was a decision. And all signs pointed back to Queen Camilla. What had started as a quiet shift in jewelry handling had now turned into something much more serious, a direct challenge to Princess Charlotte's future and legacy. And Kate Middleton was not going to stay silent. As soon as Princess Kate understood what was happening, she knew this wasn't just about jewelry. It was about Charlotte's future, and about the legacy of Princess Diana. Kate didn't rush into the spotlight. She's known for being calm, thoughtful, and careful. But this time, she felt she had no choice but to act. Her daughter's inheritance, carefully protected for years, was now in someone else's hands, and no one had asked permission. First, Kate spoke privately to palace staff she trusted. She reviewed royal inventory documents, official logs that listed who inherited which items and when. For years, items like Diana's emerald necklace, a diamond brooch, and even the Spencer tiara had been marked as future gifts for Charlotte. But now, those pieces were either missing from the list or marked available for use. It didn't add up. Even worse, photos from recent events showed Camilla's granddaughter Lola wearing some of these exact items. To Kate, this wasn't just a mistake, it was a violation of trust. She turned to Prince William. William had always believed that the legacy of his mother, Princess Diana, would live on through his children. That's why Diana's sapphire engagement ring had gone to Kate in the first place, to keep that memory close. The idea that heirlooms tied to his mother were now being handed to someone outside the direct royal line upset him deeply. Together, Kate and William decided this couldn't be ignored. They brought the issue directly to King Charles. Charles listened. He understood how sensitive the situation was. He also knew the importance of honoring Diana's memory and the careful plans that had been made for Charlotte over the years. But Queen Camilla had a different view. She reportedly believed that as queen consort, she had the right to manage the use of royal jewelry. According to sources close to her, Camilla felt that these items should be shared with the wider family, including her granddaughter. That difference of opinion sparked quiet tension inside the palace. Kate wasn't angry or dramatic, but she was clear. She explained why these heirlooms mattered, not just as jewelry, but as symbols of continuity and family history. She reminded Charles and Camilla that Charlotte was not just any royal child. She was the granddaughter of Princess Diana and third in line to the throne. Her legacy needed to be protected, and people listened. Kate's approach, respectful but firm, earned quiet respect inside the palace. Many aides and advisors agreed that the jewelry had been mishandled. Some even came forward with additional records that showed when certain items had been removed from Charlotte's list. The more evidence that surfaced, the clearer it became. This wasn't a misunderstanding. The heirlooms had been deliberately redirected, and that had to be corrected. Behind the scenes, efforts were made to quietly return the jewelry. Inventory logs were updated, and some of the most important pieces, including the emerald necklace and a sapphire ring, were once again marked for Princess Charlotte. Kate didn't gloat or celebrate. She simply made sure it was made right. And in doing so, she showed the world something powerful. She wasn't just protecting a crown jewel, she was protecting her daughter's place in royal history. Not with headlines, not with outrage, but with grace, focus, and quiet strength. Once word began to spread about the missing heirlooms and Queen Camilla's involvement, the public reaction was swift. At first, the palace remained quiet. There were no official statements, no press releases, but royal watchers, online communities, and media outlets started piecing the story together. Photos of Camilla's granddaughter, Lola, wearing jewelry pieces that hadn't been seen in years started making rounds. Some of these items were widely believed to be part of Princess Charlotte's future collection, and people noticed. Support for Kate Middleton came fast and strong. Social media lit up with hashtags like #Justice for Charlotte and #Stand with Kate. Many saw this as more than just a jewelry issue. They saw it as another chapter in a long-running story, one that connected back to Princess Diana, her struggles, and her legacy. Kate, in the eyes of many, was doing what Diana once did, standing up for what was right, even if it meant going against senior members of the royal family. Editorials praised Kate's quiet leadership. She hadn't made a dramatic scene. She hadn't gone to the press. She had simply followed the facts, protected her daughter, and defended tradition. That earned her respect. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla faced growing criticism. For years, she had worked hard to rebuild her public image. After her marriage to Charles, many people were unsure of her place in the royal family. But over time, her consistency and public service had softened opinions. Now, all that seemed to be at risk. To many, giving Charlotte's jewelry to someone outside the royal line, someone with no title and no official role, felt wrong. It felt like Camilla was overstepping. Even if her intentions were good, the optics were bad. Very bad. Some commentators pointed out that Camilla may have seen it as a grandmotherly gesture, trying to include her own family in royal traditions, but the reality was, those traditions weren't hers to rewrite. This wasn't about sharing, it was about respecting plans that had been in place for years. Plans that protected the legacy of Diana and the future of Charlotte. As more people became aware of the situation, media coverage picked up. News programs and royal experts weighed in. Some called it a royal misstep. Others were more direct, labeling it a betrayal of trust. Even royal-friendly commentators found it hard to defend Camilla's actions. The palace's silence didn't help. Without an official explanation, speculation grew. And in the absence of clarity, the public sided with the one person who had shown grace, consistency, and a protective instinct, Kate Middleton. There was also something else happening, something more emotional. For people who had admired Princess Diana, this felt personal. They remembered how she had been treated. They remembered how she fought to protect her sons. Now, her daughter-in-law was doing the same for her granddaughter. It touched people. Kate wasn't just being a royal, she was being a mother. And in that role, she reminded everyone why trust in the monarchy depends not on titles, but on actions. Across the UK, and even beyond, Kate's quiet defense of her daughter's legacy sparked something rare: broad public agreement. People from different age groups, political views, and opinions on the monarchy found themselves nodding in support of one thing: protecting Princess Charlotte's place in history. And Kate had done just that, without speeches, without fanfare, just through quiet, steady action. While the public rallied around Princess Kate, things behind palace walls became tense. Queen Camilla had always been careful with her public image. She'd spent years earning trust, taking on duties, and staying out of controversy. But now, she found herself at the center of a story she hadn't expected, one that questioned her judgment and intentions. According to palace insiders, Camilla was deeply shaken by the reaction. She hadn't anticipated the backlash. To her, the jewelry decisions may have felt practical, even thoughtful. Some say she believed sharing royal heirlooms with her granddaughter Lola was harmless. Others suggest she misunderstood how closely certain items were tied to Princess Diana and her legacy. Either way, the consequences were now very real. In private, Camilla kept a low profile. She continued her royal duties, but aides described her as visibly rattled. Her usual calm demeanor became more reserved. At a few public events, her smiles didn't seem quite as genuine. She avoided jewelry altogether for a time, perhaps in quiet response to the situation. Meanwhile, conversations were taking place behind the scenes. King Charles was caught in the middle. As monarch, he wanted to keep the family united. As a husband, he understood Camilla's perspective. But as a father, he could also see why Kate and William were upset. Sources say Charles held private discussions with both women. He reassured Camilla that her place beside him was secure. He reminded her of how far she had come and how much she had contributed. But he also acknowledged that decisions about heirlooms, especially those tied to Diana, needed to respect long-standing plans. To Kate, Charles expressed appreciation. He recognized the careful way she handled the situation. She hadn't gone to the press or made a public show of the issue. She had taken her concerns through the proper channels and acted in a way that protected the royal family's image. That meant a great deal to him. Still, the discomfort lingered. The trust between Camilla and Kate, already formal and somewhat distant, grew cooler. Though they continued to appear at public events together, there was a visible stiffness in their body language. Fewer smiles, less conversation. The warmth seen in previous years seemed to have faded. Staff noticed the shift too. People who worked closely with both women began choosing their words more carefully. Conversations that used to be simple now felt loaded. There was a clear effort from all sides to keep things civil, but the tension couldn't be ignored. This wasn't just about jewelry anymore. It was about trust. For Kate, the issue had always been personal. She wasn't fighting for a necklace. She was fighting for her daughter's rightful place in the royal story. For Camilla, the backlash felt like a step backward, a reminder that even after years of service, the public still saw limits to her role. And for Charles, it was a reminder of how fragile unity can be inside the royal family, especially when legacy and loyalty collide. As the dust began to settle, the palace focused on moving forward, but the lines had been drawn. Camilla remained queen consort. Kate remained the future queen. And in the eyes of many, this quiet conflict had revealed more than just a disagreement over jewels. It had revealed the power of legacy and the importance of who gets to carry it forward. At the heart of this quiet storm wasn't just jewelry, it was memory. It was legacy, and most of all, it was Princess Charlotte's place in the royal family's future. From the very beginning, Charlotte had been seen as a bridge between the monarchy's past and its next chapter. She was the only daughter of Prince William and Princess Catherine, third in line to the throne. And as the granddaughter of Princess Diana, her future was symbolically tied to a woman who had shaped the royal family in life, and even more, in legacy. The jewelry pieces in question weren't just pretty. They weren't even just valuable. They were personal, emotional. They told stories of love, duty, tragedy, and hope. Take the Spencer tiara, famously worn by Diana on her wedding day. It was more than a royal accessory. It was a symbol of her grace, her youth, and the beginning of a chapter that would change everything. Or Queen Mary's Lover's Knot tiara, a piece known for its elegance and its connections to both Queen Elizabeth II and Princess Diana. That tiara had history woven into every detail, with decades of royal appearances behind it. From the moment Charlotte was born, these items had been quietly set aside for her, not to wear as a child, but to receive later in life, on her 18th birthday, on her wedding day, on the day she might take on royal duties of her own. That was always the plan. And to people inside the palace, especially Princess Catherine, that plan mattered. It wasn't about ownership, it wasn't about wealth, it was about continuity. A quiet promise that the stories of the past would continue through Charlotte, that the symbols worn by Diana wouldn't vanish into archives or end up in unrelated hands. They would stay with the women carrying her story forward. That's why this situation hurt. When Catherine realized those heirlooms had been given or even loaned to someone outside the royal line, it felt like a break in that promise. It didn't matter if Lola Parker Bowles was family by marriage. She wasn't a royal. She wasn't Diana's bloodline. She wasn't part of that legacy. And to see items meant for Charlotte show up elsewhere, it was a sign that something had gone off course. Quietly, Catherine stepped in. She never made demands. She didn't issue ultimatums. She went through palace channels. She worked with trusted staff. She looked at the records. And she reminded those around her what the original plans had always been. Bit by bit, things were corrected. Pieces were returned. Notes were updated. And the internal system that tracks heirlooms was adjusted to make sure such confusion wouldn't happen again. Then came the public message, not in words, but in an image. At a charity event, Princess Catherine arrived wearing one of the most disputed pieces, the emerald necklace once worn by Diana. The message was clear. It's back where it belongs. No drama, no statement, just a quiet return to tradition. And for those paying attention, it meant everything. It meant that Charlotte's future had been protected, that Diana's memory was still honored, that the line of women who shaped the royal family would not be forgotten. In a world where royals are constantly balancing modernity and tradition, this moment showed the value of getting that balance right, not by force, not by spectacle, but by staying true to what matters most: family, legacy, and trust. While the palace worked to settle things privately, The story outside its gates had already taken on a life of its own. The headlines, the hashtags, the public debates, it all revealed just how invested people still were in the legacy of Diana and in the family she left behind. As soon as reports surfaced about the jewelry being redirected away from Princess Charlotte, royal watchers and the broader public reacted. For many, it wasn't just about heirlooms, it was about memory, about respect, about doing the right thing. Social media quickly picked sides. On platforms like Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, people began posting side-by-side photos of Diana and Catherine wearing the same pieces. Others shared clips of young Princess Charlotte waving at crowds, with captions calling her the future of the monarchy. Hashtags like #Justice for Charlotte and #Diana's legacy began trending. Videos explaining the story in short, dramatic edits reached millions. It was clear this wasn't just a small misunderstanding, it had become a royal moment that touched public emotion. Much of the sympathy leaned toward Catherine. To many, she represented quiet strength and integrity. She hadn't made a scene. She hadn't leaked details. Instead, she had quietly acted to protect her daughter's rightful inheritance and Diana's memory. That quiet dignity struck a chord, especially with younger generations who value authenticity and grace. For them, Catherine wasn't just a future queen. She was a mother doing what any mother would, standing up for her child. Camilla, on the other hand, faced a wave of criticism. Fair or not, her past still shaped how many saw her. Old wounds from Diana's story were reopened. Despite years of hard work and increased public approval, this controversy reminded people of earlier royal tensions and made some wonder if Camilla had overstepped. To her supporters, the backlash felt unfair. They argued that Camilla had every right to share jewelry from the crown collection with her family, that she was trying to include her granddaughter, Lola, in something meaningful. But others pushed back, pointing out that royal heirlooms carry legacy, not just sparkle, that they aren't simply gifts, but symbols passed down through generations with intention. The press picked up on the tension. Royal commentators debated what the situation meant. Some saw it as a sign of deeper divisions in the family. Others called it a simple misunderstanding, blown out of proportion, but most agreed. This moment had revealed how powerful public perception remains. The palace stayed quiet. No official statements were made, but photos of Catherine wearing Diana's emerald necklace spoke louder than any press release. It told the public that the issue had been addressed, that the heirlooms were back where they were intended to be, and that Charlotte's place in the royal story was secure. The way Catherine handled the situation only increased her standing. She was already admired, but now she was respected on a deeper level. People saw not just grace and beauty, but strength and resolve. For Queen Camilla, the fallout was more complex. Though she continued with her public duties, reports said she had been rattled. Friends claimed she felt misunderstood, even hurt. After years of rebuilding her image, this one incident seemed to undo much of that progress, at least in the public eye. Inside the palace, the balance between past and future had shifted, and outside, people had made up their minds. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It had become a story about legacy and who gets to protect it. In the days that followed, it became clear that Princess Catherine's approach had left a lasting impact, not just on those within the palace walls, but on the public watching from afar. Her response had been calm, deliberate, and rooted in something deeper than titles or tradition. It was about legacy, family, and fairness, and she handled it all without a single public statement. Behind the scenes, those close to the royal family began to speak of Catherine with new language, not just as a royal consort or public figure, but as a quiet force. Someone who understood how to balance modern responsibility with ancient tradition. Someone who didn't need a crown to earn respect. Catherine didn't seek credit. She never framed herself as a victim. Instead, she carried on with her duties, supported her children, and focused on what mattered most, ensuring Princess Charlotte's place in the royal story remained untouched. At a time when the royal family has been under intense public scrutiny, Her actions stood out. She didn't lean on public sympathy. She leaned on facts, on quiet advocacy, and on her own sense of duty. That kind of strength resonated. Inside the palace, staff and advisors began to see her not just as a supportive figure beside Prince William, but as a future queen in her own right, one who had proven she could handle conflict with integrity and care. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla seemed to step back. She continued to appear at public engagements, but something had shifted. Her posture was more guarded, her smiles shorter, and her usual warmth during walkabouts had faded slightly. Friends of the Queen consort shared that she had taken the situation personally. The public criticism stung. She had worked hard to be accepted, to move beyond the shadows of her past and into a more respected role. But now, that progress felt undone. Camilla had hoped that by bringing her granddaughter into the royal fold, even informally, she could bridge her two worlds, her past and her present. But the move, intentional or not, had crossed a line in the eyes of the royal family and the public. For King Charles, the situation became a balancing act. As monarch, he had to maintain unity. As a husband, he wanted to support Camilla. And as a father, he respected the role William and Catherine played, especially in upholding the traditions tied to Diana's memory. Palace insiders say Charles held private meetings with both women. He reassured Camilla of her place beside him. He also acknowledged Catherine's quiet leadership, expressing appreciation for her restraint and care in how she handled a sensitive issue. Still, the unspoken tension lingered. Camilla had been reminded that even after all these years, some lines couldn't be crossed, especially where Diana's legacy was concerned, and especially when it came to the future of the monarchy embodied in the next generation, William, Catherine, and their children. It wasn't about jewelry anymore. It was about what that jewelry symbolized and who was entrusted to carry that story forward. In the public eye, the dust began to settle. But those closest to the situation knew that something had shifted, not just between two women, but in how the monarchy would move forward. And as Catherine quietly guided her family through it all, it became clear. The future of the crown wasn't just about titles, it was about the values behind them: integrity, duty, and quiet strength. In the end, this wasn't just a story about jewels. It was a glimpse into the delicate threads that hold the royal family together, threads of tradition, memory, and the quiet battles that shape legacy behind closed doors. What began with questions over a necklace became a defining moment for two women in very different places within the monarchy. Queen Camilla, who had spent years building acceptance, found herself retreating into silence after one misstep, and Princess Catherine, always graceful and measured, rose not with loud statements, but with thoughtful action, reminding everyone why she's trusted by so many, both inside and outside the palace. Princess Charlotte, the heirlooms now restored to her name, represent more than sparkle and ceremony. They are symbols of the past and promises for the future. Diana's memory remains protected, not through headlines, but through the choices of those who carry her story forward. As for the royal family, they continue to walk the line between legacy and change. Every decision, every appearance, every silence tells a story. And this time, that story was about protecting what matters, not just to the crown, but to the family behind it. In a world where royal headlines often fade fast, this one stayed, not because of scandal, but because it struck something deeper. A reminder that strength isn't always loud, and that legacy lives on in the quiet choices that define character. The crown may be passed down, but it's the people and the values they defend that truly shape its future. Thanks for watching.